Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Nady the Coder. Today we are going to be talking about data types in JavaScript, what are certain data types and what a data type really is. But before diving into the lecture, please make sure you watch the previous lectures on JavaScript just to make sure that you follow along the JavaScript tutorial. Let's dive into the lecture and talk about data types. What is a data type? A value in JavaScript is always of a certain type, for example, a string or a number or anything. There are 8 basic data types in JavaScript. Number. So we're going to be talking about a number first. A number type represents both integer and floating point numbers. For example, we have a variable that is the name of the variable is n, and if you've assigned a number value, since you can see it's just a number, it doesn't have any characters or anything else, so it's just a pure number, so that's how we know that's a number. Or we have another example of, for example, 12.345, and it's been assigned to another variable called n. So there's a slight difference between a simple number or integer and then a floating number. So floating number always have a decimal point, and there are many operations for numbers. For example, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. We can do all of these mathematical operations on these numbers. And beside the regular numbers, there are so-called special numeric values, which also belong to this data type. We call them infinity. That's basically a positive infinity. This is a negative infinity, and then not a number. So basically it represents if you do some computation or some mathematical operation, then it results to something else, and sometimes we get not a number. So they're basically special numeric values and numbers, and their data types are basically numbers, and we will see in the lecture and in next slides how we check the type of a variable or value. Infinity represents the mathematical infinity. It's not something specific to JavaScript or any programming language. So we can get the infinity by just dividing a number by 0. So this is just a normal mathematical operation. So let's just do it in the code editor and see how it really works. So for example, we have a number. We have a number 1, 2, 3, and then, for example, let's declare a new variable, call it result, and we do something like, for example, 1, 2, 3 divided by 0, and we just print the value on console. The variable, we just pass the variable to this and save the file, and when we refresh the page, you'll get infinity. So this is basically the special numeric value from JavaScript. So this is basically what we mean by infinity. Not a number, or NaN, represents a computational error. If you ever get NaN, it basically represents a computational error. It is a result of an incorrect or an undefined mathematical operation. For example, if you do some mathematical operation and it turns out to be something else, the result is not expected, or the result is not a number, then it will just give you not a number in the result. For example, if we do we divide a string by a number, what happens here? For example, we divide it by 2. What happens here? If I save the file and refresh, I'll get not a number because the types are not the same. If you go to the code and see that this is a string, how we know it's a string? Because we are wrapping it in double quotes. We'll learn more about the strings in the next slide. But yeah, for now you can see that it's a string and we're dividing it by 2, so it's really not a mathematical operation. We should be dividing a number by number and doing the mathematical operations on that. So in this case, it's not throwing any error, but it just returns not a number. So yeah, let's just take a small note. Doing math is safe in JavaScript. We can do anything, divide by 0, treat non-numeric strings as numbers, etc. Just we saw that we divided a string by a number and we got not a number. So it's really safe. It doesn't throw any kind of error. So the script will never stop with a fatal error. for example, it will not stop working. So sometimes you get an error and then your whole script is broken, your application is broken. So in this case, if you are dealing with numbers, you'll just, at worst, you'll get not a number as a result, but your script will still run and it should be fine. If there is not a number somewhere in a mathematical expression, it propagates to the whole result. For example, if you are doing some kind of mathematical operation like this, for example, 4 minus 5 multiplied by 10 and divide by 100 again. So in here, if you have any result at any place, it's cause you have some computational error, so it will propagate to the whole expression, and it will return not a number as a result. So this is what it means. Big integers. So we talked about numbers, now we have to talk about big integers. The number type cannot represent integer values larger than 2 into the power of 53 minus 1. This is the positive number. This is the maximum value number can take, or less than this. So it's basically a negative or negation of this value. So this is the maximum the maximum number, and it cannot be greater than this. So a normal number cannot carry more than this. Then we have an introduction to big integers. Sometimes we need really big numbers, for example, for cryptography or microsecond precision timestamps and all that stuff. So big integer or big int numbers are rarely needed, and we rarely use them in JavaScript. Big integer is supported in Firefox, Chrome, Edge, Safari, but not in Internet Explorer. So if you have a number, for example, like this, so at the end you just have to add an n, so it will make the number as a big int. So if you omit the last n from the number, then it will not be treated as a big integer. Let's talk about string data type. A string in JavaScript must be surrounded by quotes. We already seen that. We have 3 types of quotes. We have double quotes, single quotes, and we call them backticks. Double and single quotes are simple quotes. There's practically no difference between them in JavaScript, so they're quite similar. Backticks are extended functionality that has been added in the newer version of JavaScript. And these codes, which is introduced in the version of JavaScript, they allow us to embed variables and expressions into a string by wrapping them in this expression. So let's just take a quick look into this. For example, I have, let's just get rid of this for now. We have, for example, first, or we'll just say we have a full name, and we name it, for example, John Doe, and we want to add, for example, the age to this name. For example, we have another variable, we call it, for example, result or something like that, and instead of using the double quotes or single quotes, we can make use of backticks. And we can say, for example, you can type any message, for example, hey, and then, for example, I want to put the name into this. So one way to do is to, type in the name just like this. But what if we have the name is dynamic and we want to do it, make it dynamically, and we don't want to rely on, the static name. So what we can do is just type in $, and then 2 curly braces, and then the variable name. So this is the variable name that we put in here, and we can say, hey, John Doe, you are age years old. So age is basically this variable, and it will give us the name. Let's just make this full name, John Doe, and when we save it and just put the results in here, and we can just print it. So what happens is, when we refresh, hey, John Doe, you are 35 years old. What happens if we change the name, for example, to Jackson Dante? So changing the variables and will just propagate over here as well. So we are just not relying on the names itself, but the variable, and we are just copying it into the other one. So this is how we can do it. It's really cool. you can do. So once JavaScript execute this line, it will just evaluate the values. It will grab the value of this variable and this variable and will put it into the string, and it will just return the full results. So this is how it is the special one. So these are the special string. There is no character type, for example, in the C or C++ language, and in Java it is called character, so we don't have anything like that in JavaScript. And we will be talking about Boolean data types now. They're also called logical types. Boolean type has only two values, true or false. A Boolean value can either be true or false. It cannot be anything else. So Boolean data types are very strict. They just have two values. They could be on and off, or we can just say true or false. For example, we can say let's just do it in the code. And for example, we have a variable, and we can say is greater. We name the variable like this. And for example, we have a condition. For example, we say that 4 is greater than 1. So what happens in this? So when this line is executed, this expression is evaluated. So it checks if number 4 is greater than 1. If it is greater than 1, then it will return true and assign true to this greater variable, and we can just print the value of this greater variable here. So if it's greater than 1, then it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. So let's just save and refresh. You can see true as a result. So this is how it works. For example, if I say less than 4 is less than 1 and save the result, refresh the page, it will return false because 4 is obviously greater than 1 and it's not less than 1. So this is how a Boolean data type works. So it's either true or false based on the evaluation. Now we have another type that's called the null value. A special null value does not belong to any of the types described above. It's just some kind of special type. JavaScript null is not a reference to a non-existing object or null pointer like in some other languages like C++. It is a special value which represents nothing, empty, or value unknown. So for example, if you have a variable and it has no value, then you can just assign a value to this, and we call it null. This is how we write it. So it literally means if JavaScript executes the value of this, so it really literally means that it has no value or it is empty, and we can do our things over here. Later on, we'll get at why it is important to write, null into the variable name. Another type we have is the undefined type value. The special value undefined also stands apart. It's different from the other data types. It makes a type of its own, just like null. It's some kind of similar to null, but the meaning of undefined is value is not assigned. Like there is no values at all. So the null is different than undefined because this variable still has some value that is null. But undefined, for example, if I don't assign anything to this variable and save it as it is, so by default the value is undefined. So this is why it's a bit different than null. If a variable is declared but not assigned a value, just like we did, then its value is undefined. For example, let age, and there is no value of a variable, then it is undefined by default. Let's talk about objects and symbols data types. The object type is special type of a data type. All other types are called primitive because their values can contain only a single thing. For example, we talked about string, we talked about numbers, we talked about booleans. So all of these data types have they have some primitive value. They contain just only a single thing. That could be only a number, could only be a string. It cannot be both string or number. It cannot be both boolean or number or string or combination of that. It could be only a single number. But in contrast, objects are used to store collections of data and more complex entities. So Basically, an object contains all of those it can be a combination of all those data types, and it can store multiple values. The symbol type is a different type, and it is used to create unique identifiers for objects. We'll talk about it more in the upcoming lectures. So yeah, let's just not sweat about it for now. The type of operator. Let's talk about type of operator. The type of operator returns the type of an argument. For example, we have a value over here, and we assign, for example, a variable. We have a value over here, for example, 1, 2, 3. So let's just see what is the type of this variable. So what we have to do is we just have to write type of, then space, then the variable name. So we don't have to worry about anything else. So for right now, we know the value of this variable, but in most cases, sometimes if we are getting the data from some external server, then we don't know the type of the value that we are getting, or data that we are getting. So in that cases, we check the type of that variable, and we evaluate and do take some certain decisions based on that. So check the type of the type of the data. We can just do something like this, save it, and when I refresh, we can see the type is number, since we have assigned a number to this variable. What happens if we assign a string value to this? For example, I can name it, I can give any type of data to this, and when I save it and then refresh, then you will get the data type changes and says the data type of this variable is string. So this is how we can identify the type of, and we can use the type of operator like this. It is useful when we want to process values of different types differently, or just want to do a quick check. For example, type of 0, type of name, or type of true, and all that. We can find out type for any kind of data type. This is the end of this lecture, and I hope you have learned something new in this video. Please make sure that you like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to press the bell icon for future updates. And until then, I'll see you in the next lecture.